The centerpiece of these portfolios are the transparencies. In just a minute, I'll show you how to use them. But first, I'd like to give you a brief overview of the contents of each of these portfolios. The exemplars of the individual lettering styles are rendered in multiple sizes to encourage students to practice at several nib sizes. All pages are printed on high-quality, sturdy 32-pound paper meant to hold up to years of handling and usage. On the inside of the loose leaf covers, the folder, made of heavy cardstock, is printed, first of all, a large stroke sequence page for each of the lettering styles, and secondly, a broad-edge nib equivalency chart for all of the most commonly used nibs currently available, such as Mitchell, and Browse, and Tape, and Speedball, Parallel Pen, and others. Several pages of guidelines for the specific nib sizes are included. A 2-minute section at the end of this video briefly covers how to use these. A more extensive, free 13-minute video on YouTube entitled Guidelines for Calligraphy covers more in depth how to use these. Several pages of instructions on how to use these materials are included. They cover methods to develop positive analytical awareness of your letter forms, and also ways to self-correct the letters. It's easy to reach a visual sticking point where, after practicing a letter form, you just can't see how to best correct a nuance or detail. What is needed is a set of eyes outside of your own to clearly give you feedback as to how the model differs from your own letter form. This is where the transparency comes into play. By superimposing it atop the letter you have done, it becomes immediately apparent where the corrections need to be made. The student practices in black ink. The letters on the transparency are in red. In this example, two things stand out. First, the student's letter form is too wide. It is caused in large part because the pen angle is too flat. This drives the nib in a more horizontal trajectory, making the entire form too wide. Then secondly, the triangular counter space in green is too small. This is a consequence of branching out from the first vertical stroke too high, that is, too late. By branching out sooner, that is, from lower, it would open up a larger triangular counter. A second way of seeing this is to position the model in red next to the student's letter form in black. Some of you can see more clearly and analyze what needs to be done from this point of view. Let's look at these three different renderings of the letter I. Each has something different not working, some more apparent than others. When we put the transparency atop the one in the middle, we obviously see that the vertical stroke isn't vertical enough. It's wiggling. When we move the transparency over to the side, we can see that the letter on the far right is too heavy. This is usually because the pen angle was too flat. In looking at the middle version of the letter O, we see a common mistake people make when they first begin doing it. When we superimpose the transparency atop it, we can see that this letter is far too rotund, too wide. When we place the transparency next to it, we can see how much more we have to compress this form. It really is much more elliptical, somewhat of an oval shape, not the rotund shape that people mistakenly tend to make when they first begin. Although there are some good things happening in this version of the letter A, there are also some parts that need to be fixed. When we place the transparency atop it, we quickly see the triangular counter at the bottom is really short-changed. That will eventually have to be opened up. When we move the transparency next to it, we can see something very good happening. That is, that twisting ribbon of ink at the top is flowing upward, almost like a banner in the wind. That's what we want happening in this part of the form. In this version of the letter S, there's a common mistake people tend to make. They flop down the top and flip up the tail. The center stroke is good in its narrow vertical quality, but once you superimpose the transparency atop it, or move it to the side, it becomes very easy to see how the top stroke needs to rise up and the bottom stroke needs to flow downward. These are just a few examples of how to use the transparencies. When you place a transparency in red over your letters, one letter at a time, and analyze each individual form, the effect is immediately eye-opening. Differences jump out that heretofore you just didn't see. It is invaluable in giving you immediate feedback and will prevent you from perpetuating mistakes. It will provide you with a set of eyes outside your own, if you take the time to use it. This is an original guideline page from your set, printed at a specific percentage of gray. In some instances, you want to do lettering that has a slant to it. You will first and foremost copy the slant lines onto the piece of paper that you will be lettering on. Then you will use your writing lines page from your set of guidelines and print this onto the sheet of paper that you already have your slant lines on. Thus, you wind up getting both slant lines and writing lines on the piece of paper that you actually want to letter on or use for a transparency. Let me show you that process right here. This is my all-in-one inkjet printer. I'm going to put onto the screen my slant lines from my set of guidelines. I place it on the screen of the scanner, decide the darkness or lightness that I want to copy it at, and then copy onto the piece of paper that I want to be lettering on. And then out it comes. I'm going to take that piece of paper and I'll set it aside temporarily. And then I'll take the original slant lines page off the screen. And in its place, I'll put the writing lines page onto the screen that I want to copy onto the final paper that I'll be writing on. Now I'll take the paper that I just made my slant lines on and I place it into my printer. Some printers you have to put the paper in facing down, some facing up. Refer to your manual or, like most of us, just use trial and error. I hit my copy button and out comes my paper with both slant lines and the guidelines. I'm ready to letter. You can make an almost infinite combination of slant lines and writing lines this way. Using this set of guidelines you have at your disposal. Happy lettering.